Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody, to our bi weekly Tuesday fight nights here at the MTG Paper Legacy Discord. My name's Oliver V. Up above me in that box up there, we got the one and only Mick Diff. Mick Diff, how you doing today?
Doing well. I think there are multiples of us with internet issues tonight, so I apologize for my frozen face. Um, but that's all right. I basically have that same look all the time anyway. I am doing all right. Really exciting first round here. One of your specialty decks against one of my specialty decks. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, ironically enough, you and I get to be in the booth together for the first time in a while and watch Malfi take it on with Bant Food Chain, one of my loves, up against Drav, who's going to be on Pox, which, you've been known for many things in your distinguished legacy career, but Mono Black Pox is definitely up there in terms of what you are famous for amongst our community.
Um, And this combines something else that I have a long love for as well, and that is the rack. Uh, when I play modern, I play a rack, and it's really I'm really glad to see it here. I do think, especially pre-board, that this is going to be a uphill battle for Drav. But I think if the pieces come down together correctly, Malfi may just not be able to fight back.
So what's really interesting here for me in this matchup is we do know both players already mulligan down to 6, which is kind of where Drav wants to be. I do agree that this is a difficult game. One, you're up against a deck that has 2 Uros, which is kind of exactly what you need to build to beat any Pox variant. However, if we just see Drav being able to hit the key pieces and prevent Malfi from really, first of all, comboing, but then also being to establish a clock, because even just a 3-3 beater will be enough to get there in the end, in theory. There is the chance of Drav being able to make it, but I do agree. Malfi is definitely advantage going into this.
Uh, I mean, this is absolutely the start that you want to have if you're Drav, though, is resolving a him to Torok, because if you're Malfi, you'd much rather get rid of two cards that aren't food chain than the potential of, well, and those two. I mean, seeing the Ice Fang Quaddle go away is a little bit of a bummer for Malfi, I'm sure, but um, better than getting rid of a food chain.
Yeah, I
And has
suppose.
another one anyway.
Yeah, and so this is it. So we are getting to this point already where we're starting to see why Malfi is kind of advantage in this matchup. Where Malfi, even though he's a combo deck, he is just putting creatures on the board. And so even if Drav is able to disrupt him and stop him from being able to combo off all the way, it isn't really going to matter if you just are being beat down by 1/1s and 2/2s, right? It's kind of the classic elves versus control thing, right? Where you don't actually need to combo off because eventually your little board of dudes, your little dorks, are just going to need to be answered. Um,
I
of
would
course, we see.
lie. I would be lying if I said I haven't taken it all the way with just Wirewood symbiotes.
Oh, and we're seeing how good that him was against Malfi, being able to strip the second land, so he had to cantrip with 2 Ice Fangs to be able to find the second mana source. That's actually pretty fantastic to watch. The Lily of
And
the Lost Hope would have been pretty fantastic if it is resolved, right? Just being able to stymie a little bit of this pressure and be able to present a clock in theory in the long term if you're able to get that emblem.
so we're seeing a Liliana of the Veil come down, and with all of those, with the two Ice Fangs on board, you just automatically go straight up.
Yeah, your edicts are not going to be that relevant. In theory, it stymies the clock a little bit, but you just want to be hitting things that are in Malfi's hands at this point. If you're Malfi, do you attack in at this Lily now? Oh, we see food chain.
And nothing else left in hand. So, um,
Malfi just playing out the food chain in case he's able to top deck. Um, I guess honestly any of the combo pieces, but you're gonna lose this food chain anyway to Liliana uptick, so you might as well deploy it onto the board. Edict down, eating the bird. It looks like we're gonna keep the pressure with the snakes and rack and surgical. Okay, I have to admit, the surgical on the Birds of Paradise is pretty interesting for me. I do like it a little bit in that you are hitting more potential mana sources out of the deck. Um, But it is interesting because in theory there are just so many better targets, right? Even just like hitting the potential Uro. Of course, these both these players do not know what's actually in the opponent's deck. However, it's hard to see green and blue and not just assume that there's going to be an Uro in there in the list.
Yeah, I it's a little bit tough um snapping that surgical off on a bird, especially given that you have to assume that there are Uros in the list. And, 8 rack pox, that's one of those cards that was really driving like Cling to Dust being a staple in this deck for so long.
I guess this is
Um,
I'm sorry. We don't really know what is in Drav's hand or how many cards are. I think that he is hellbent now, so this surgical could have also just been thrown off before Lilion upticking, but it looks like that didn't happen. Oh, we had the Lilion and downtick. That's right, of course. Swinging back in, I imagine killing the Lily here. Might as well, kind of free. And now we can just go into top deck mode and try to get things happening.
well, we have mana.
So for those who don't know the interaction here, Mist Hollow Griffin, I believe it is out of Avacyn Restored, is the best Griffin around. And if you don't know why, he's a 3/3 flying for 4, but you can cast Mist Hollow Griffin from exile. So the cool interaction here, and the thing that makes it amazing with Food Chain, is Food Chain has the text of you kind of sacrifice, but you don't really. You exile a creature that you have on board, and you get to make any color of mana +1 that you can then spend on creature spells. So what you can start doing is you can play a Mist Hologriffin, sack to Food Chain for 5 mana of any color. In theory, you want to make blue your first couple of instances, right? So you can recast a Mist Hologriffin. Um, but just chain infinite mana, doing the whole like chain out plan. And then what you get to do is essentially just have infinite mana that you can spend on creature spells. The way that you normally combo out with this list in particular is with Walking Ballista, which you can go find with Ranger Captain or Vios. But we get to see one of the splash cards that Malfi has put into this list. He puts down the one Murktide Regent just to have a little bit of pressure in the air. Um, that's I gotta say, I love seeing the Murktide region, but I'm really confused about what it's actually doing in this deck. It's able to kind of be, I mean, do a Delver adjacent plan of just beating down with flyers, but it doesn't combo off that well, right? It doesn't actually pay off with the food chain at all. And that's the interesting thing about Malfi's list, right? Is Malfi has actually gone down on Ranger Captain and Biosis. Typically, we see these Bant lists running 3 and down to just a single Walking Ballista as well, putting in a main board Endurance, a main board Force Negation, and a main board Ranger Captain and Vios. I'm sorry, main board Berktide Regent. But looks
Mafi
like
did exactly what uh, Brav's probably afraid of in any matchup, anyways, and that's establishing a board presence and establishing pressure. And that's one thing that 8 rack or Pox needs to really maintain is an empty board state. Um, because once a threat is resolved and on board, and you can't if you can't get rid of it, then there's a big issue for you.
yeah, and
That's
that's
why this deck is running, so many, uh, Fatal Push, Innocent Blood, Collective Brutality, Smallpox. Curse Scroll is an effectively a removal spell. Um, Ensnaring Bridge is effectively a removal spell.
Oh, that's actually a super good point, Bear. And also thank you, Xylophone. Yes, I guess delving away a potential Miss Hologriffin that is kind of removed through combat, you're able to get it back to be able to be recastable. It's one of the same reasons why these lists used to run Trinket Mage to be able to go and get both the Ballista or a Relic of Progenitus. But we're seeing these players sleeve up and go into the next game. Real quick question. Let's look at this 6 rack deck first. 2 Leyline of the Void, 1 Underworld Dreams, 1 Toxic Deluge, 2 Engineered Plagues, 1 Sinkhole, 1 Collective Brutality, 2 Chains of Mephistopheles, 1 Bitter Blossom, 2 Surgical Extraction, and 2 Pithing Needle. What are you liking out of this sideboard plan for Drav here?
So the two Pithing Needles are probably good enough. I don't know if there's anything. Well, the Sinkhole should probably come in as well.
What do you name
Uh,
with Pithing Needle, though? Because it can't stop the food chain ability, right? Since it's a mana production ability.
Walking Ballista.
Okay, there we go.
I mean, If you can stop Walking Ballista from pinging you, then, any of the removal spells in the deck deal with it. Including, if, uh, whatever he decides to bring in. But, I think Pithing Needle shutting off Walking Ballista is is big game for him.
Do you think there's any potential that we see Underworld Dreams come in? We're looking
Um,
at a deck that has a ton of cantrips. It also has all these draw bodies in both the Flying Snakes and the Uros. Is it worth it to bring in an Underworld Dreams here?
I think if you're gonna bring in Underworld Dreams, then you have to, like, reasonably look at Chains, and I think Chains would be better in this matchup than Underworld Dreams just because it's a little bit faster.
All right, I can respect that. Looking over at Malfi's plan real quick, we have two Carpet Flowers, one Collector Oof, one Containment Priest, one Endurance, one Aethersworn Canonist, one Flusterstorm, one Force Negation, one Grafdigger's Cage, one Gut Shot, one Prismatic Ending, that new spicy tech out of Modern Horizons 2, one Rest in Peace, one Source of Plowshares, and two Veil of Summers. For me, as somebody who plays Food Chain decently from time to time, I think Prismatic Ending is a really amazing card for this list. Kind of like in every three-color white deck, you're going to want to board it in here because you're able to hit any of the win conditions when they actually hit board. Even if it's answering a Liliana for 3 mana and just trading on the same amount of mana value, that's fantastic. Or if you're able to hit one of the rack effects for 1 mana, also completely worth it. However, the Veil of Summer is absolute house. We all know that.
Yeah, the Swords is does nothing, the Rip does nothing, the Prismatic Ending is an absolute slam dunk. Gut Shot does nothing, Cage does nothing. I mean, I think, an argument could be made for Force of Negation because this is the type of matchup where you do want your spells that counter, non-creature spells. Um, I guess that's really it though, yeah, Veil of Summer, Prismatic Ending, and then maybe Force of Negation is
That's
for me at least.
That's interesting for me to hear. I would have think that in this sort of matchup where we get so top deck heavy and so much of the hand is stripped, that this would be a matchup that we would be wanting to go down on forces. Would you be saying you would want to go up to 6 force effects, or would you be trimming down on force of wills and putting in the force negation as a replacement for one of them?
I would trim on the Force of Wills and bring up Force of Negations.
Okay, I can respect that 100%. Is a card that you can actually play by itself, if you get what I mean, where you're not going to be hard casting a Force of Will more than likely, but that Force Negation can still be live even if you don't have a blue card to pitch from hand.
Um, and it just very cleanly deals with a lot of the threats from Drav's deck.
So of note here, Trav started off on the 7 with Malfi going down to 6. Of course, Malfi being able to be on the draw here, so able to make up for that mulligan a little bit. But this is exactly the sort of matchup where you really don't want to be mulling hands, right? If you have lands and a few spells, you're just going to keep it no matter what they are, just because you're going to be getting stripped to such a great extent.
Yeah, there's I know in modern at least, I've historically taken the uh draw against when I'm playing a rack deck because I just want to get them down that extra card. Um, Legacy is a little bit too fast for that for many obvious reasons, but I say that, but modern has gotten a lot faster.
So up until this point, Malfi has been able to do almost nothing except for play lands. Just everything has been continually stripped. We had the turn one Ponder, but then followed up on the next turn by in what was an IOK and a Thoughtseize to hit the Brainstorm and the Ice Fang in hand. And now we have a Hymn to Turok threatening to take 2 mana sources away, and we'll potentially more than likely going to get to see what this last card is. We are seeing a fetch in response, so it looks like this is going to be coming out right away. Is it another Ice Fang? It is. All right. We're going to go ahead and get this draw action in, and then have this, more than likely, have this him resolve. All right, show me what this last card is. I really want to know. Show it to me, baby. and we're not going to get to see it. The two mana sources in hand, the fetch land and the Karakas disappearing. So we have this unknown card in Malfi's hand, but Malfi has just been completely stripped throughout this entire second game here, right? Has just really not been able to do anything besides a Ponder and Ice Fang, and just all of his resources dissipating away.
Yeah, thankfully Malfi has quite a few uh, basic lands and decks to insulate himself a little bit against this wasteland.
Yeah, thank goodness. That is actually one of the perks of food chain. You're able to play this dork and basic plan that it feels fantastic. I have to say, every time that I play against Delver and I just get to be fetching for basics and playing out mana dorks. Um, I guess while we have a sec while we're waiting, is this another hymn that's on the stack to go ahead and hit this last card?
Um,
Another snake.
Getting rid of that land.
Well, at this point, I guess Malfi is technically advantage. Both players are hellbent, and you have a clock for two. However, with it just being two snakes, you do have to be worried about Drab just taking a hold of it here. And we have a 3 mana walker coming down.
Yeah, I think
Do
you
you
just still keep the hands empty. Oh, I guess Drav feels differently, so gonna take care of one of those coatls.
This is interesting because all it really does is trade 1 for 1 with the snakes. You technically are under pressure, but you have a lot of turns to come out of it. Um, I don't know. That definitely is an interesting thought. But now we get to see an ensnaring bridge come down, likely off the top. And force pitch blue card.
So Malfi gonna be taking 3 here during the upkeep.
Hilariously, Drab has a faster clock right now.
Yeah.
Even after all these swings with the snakes, it's still this one rack is going to be able to outrace all the pressure that's already been put on. Oh, and that is an amazing draw off the top.
Yep, and that's gonna eat that snake.
So this is a
So
difficult spot for Malfi to be in. I feel like your one way out of it at this point is, let's see, honestly, Uro is probably our best way to get out of it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would have even played out the that land there. I think I would have just held on to it. Force Drav to use up discard spells.
Potentially. The thing is, you are mana hungry to a certain extent with this deck, and you are off one of your color sources. So you don't want to um, discard the land, basically just discard away to a Lily and then draw your prismatic ending or one of honestly, any of your white cards without having access to that white source, right? So I can respect going ahead and playing it. But now we're under this huge onus. So even if we deal with the rack, even if we can start to race that, oh, and draws the prismatic ending.
Oh,
Speak of the
all right. I
devil.
guess that's what you get.
But the thing is, you still have this Lily of the Last Hope that you're facing down. And Lily ultimates at 7. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Lily of the Last Hope, when we get to 7, all this upping doesn't matter with no creatures in play, but it's just this ticking clock where when Drab ultimates it at 7, there's just going to be a zombie army coming more and more and more in every single turn. And Malfi's not going to be able to overcome it unless he somehow strings together the combo here.
Well, I mean,
Uro!
just getting like the greatest hits of rips.
Of note, Malfi does need to hit green source land to be able to actually start turning on this Uro. Oh, oh, but we get directly into the Murktide region. I'll be honest, y'all. I looked at this Murktide region in this list and was like, "That's a fun one." I don't think that that's right. But you know what? Forget me. So far, this has been fantastic in both games. Just being able to provide a substantial clock that you don't need to combo off when you're beating in with a 7/7.
Yeah, let's see if well, Drav did not rip a removal spell, so it looks like Liliana here is going to be taking a fairly sizable hit. What's that coming in for?
It'll be 5 now because the
7?
-2, -1, right? It
Oh,
is
right,
it
right,
is a
right, yeah.
7/7, but the -2, -1 is gonna stay on it throughout this next turn. So Liliana is technically still there. You can still draw a removal spell on this next turn and protect the Lily, make it so you're able to eventually get all the way back up. But, oh, this is scary. Malfi with a Ponder, so getting green source here as well is also just fantastic to turn on the Uro.
And finds it.
Wow, what a sequence of draws. I'll be very honest. When Drab drew the Lily of the Last Hope off the top, I figured that that was it. But the Uro into the Murktide region is just completely able to turn this game around. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that was some insanely good draws. The prismatic ending, the Murktide region, the Uro, very good.
So of note, a little bit of a comment in the chat here. That Lily, it was hit by 5 because of the -2, -1 that was left over on the from the Lily activation, but unfortunately, Drab had a black die there instead of an additional white one, so it was a little hard to see. Lily was actually at 7 at that point when it was hit, making it go down to 2. See a Wasteland on the drop, cutting off from additional green source, making it so if you hit this Uro, it's technically gonna be stuck there for a little bit. Um, but oh, what's happening? Is this a surgical on Ponder?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Unfortunately, drawing that just a turn too late, right? To actually be able to hit the Uro while it was sitting there in the yard. Quite unfortunate. I like hitting the Ponder here out of all the choices. Um, if you know Food Chain, you know if there's a single drop in the list. Uh, the birds, you honestly want Malfi to be drawing the birds at this point. That is exactly the type of draws you want to be giving. So I can have massive respect for going ahead and hitting this. Um, oh, Murktide gets bigger, doesn't it, from that
From the exiling of
Ponder, right?
yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You just go face now, right?
So this Murktide should be 8/8 now, right?
I believe so. But uh
We do know from our lovely table spotter Pie Boy who jumped in today to be with us, that the +2 +1 on the Lily did go back to the Murktide, so it should have been 6 hitting it. So no, we're just talking a little bit with our table spotter here, just making sure that we go ahead and get this Murktide to the proper place.
okay, and I'm back.
It's right. It is a night of technological difficulties. Thank you so much, everyone in chat, for being here with us. Yes, Rax, hitting the Ponder does trigger the Murktide. Murktide Regent has the additional text of whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on it. There being a Ponder hit with the Surgical, it is supposed to grow the Murktide. Oh no, it looks like the player the players are just playing it out at this point. As our table spotter is lovingly putting it going, they are just having fun. LOL. We do have a Turgor's Lantern that came down in that period of time. Turgor's Lantern being able to dome people for 3, essentially. Uh, you tap it, and target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice an land permanent or discard a card. At this point, however, Malfi is honestly just able to take 3 for the most part, as long as you stay out of range of the Shrieking Affliction. You don't need to go ahead and sacrifice either of your two Basset Bomb threats. Hey, the +1/+1 counter. Going ahead and attacking in, we get another Uro trigger. Again, just gaining life and making so the Shrieking Infliction is not going to be able to go the full burnout. And this is it. This is the last draw for draft. We're going to have to see what happens
Oh,
here. And we're packing it up.
just in time for
That's
me to be back.
fantastic. That sequence of draws on Malfi's side when they were both top decking of the Uro into the Murktide Regent with enough to cast it,
Yeah,
into
that was nuts.
Ponder for the second blue source to hit the to be able to cast the Uro. The turn before Drab drew the surgical to hit the Uro that was in the yard. That was so fantastic. Really
Yeah, that was
fantastic
really
plays
good.
all around. Thank you, Drab, for playing with us today. Thank you, Malfi, for playing as well. Representing Food Chain hype. For all of y'all who are in chat with us today, we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a break. Mike, I think that you're going to step out for the rest, and we're going to be having Prez BOTW step in. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been a long week already, and it's only Tuesday.
That is the way that it goes. We a bunch of us have been getting spectrumed per se, as we like to put it. But y'all, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Oliver V here commentating for you today for the rest of Fight Night. Up above, we have Mick Diff, the cardboard cutout, with us, and we will be back for round two in just a handful of minutes. Thanks a ton, y'all.